Hi, I'm a guitarist, and yes, I can read notes. Hi, this is Dmitry Clef, and today I want to talk about why sheet music is cooler than tabs. There is a common joke that guitarists don't know music theory. It's a joke because it's often true. And the big reason for that is simple. Most guitarists grow up with tabs, not with sheet music. Let me give you 7 reasons, not because tabs are bad, but because sheet music gives you much more. Just a couple of days ago, a new student called me. She already plays a bit using tabs. She studied with another teacher before. And she asked a very honest question. Do I really need to learn sheet music? My answer was simple. If you have the chance, yes, absolutely. Because tabs got her started, but sheet music is what will let her understand what she's playing. And that's exactly what these 7 reasons are about. Reason number 1. Rhythm, time itself. With tabs, you often need to already know the piece. You have to hear it first. Look at this example written in ASCII tabs. If you've never heard this piece before, can you really tell exactly when to plug the strings? Not approximately, not by guessing. Honestly, you can't. At best, you can guess. Now look at the same example written in sheet music. Every note exists in time. Every duration is defined. All moments, note and rest length are calculated as fractions of time. Nothing is guessed, nothing is assumed. Now you know exactly how to play this. Sheet music can also show voices. You can see here, the high voice, the melody, is highlighted in green, and the low voice, the bass, is highlighted in purple. Tabs flatten everything in one stream, but real rhythm lives in how voices interact in time, and that's exactly what sheet music shows. And just to be fair, you can indicate rhythm with tabs, but not with plain ASCII tabs. And once you do, you're already halfway back to sheet music. With sheet music you don't need to hear the piece first. You can play music you've never heard before, because time itself is written into the score. That alone changes everything. Reason number 2. Articulation, how notes speak. Sheet music tells you how notes should be played. Staccato, tenuto, accents, legato. All of that is written explicitly. For example, when people play only from tabs, they often hear advice like, listen to the music or listen to what you play. That's a good advice, but it's also vague. It depends on taste, experience and guesswork. In sheet music, articulation is not a suggestion, it's clearly defined. You don't guess how notes should speak, you read it. Reason number 3, dynamics, shaping sound in time. Sheet music also shows how loud or soft the music should be. Piano, forte, crescendo, diminuendo, sudden changes, gradual changes. Dynamics are part of the written language. Tabs mostly show where to put your fingers. Sheet music shows how the sound breathes and grows. Reason number 4, fingering as an art. Good fingering is not just about comfort. It allows to play cleaner, faster, more evenly. Choosing the right fingers isn't random, it's almost an art form. In fact, there are specialists whose job is exactly that. They are called fingering editors. Their work is to decide which fingers, positions and articulations actually make musical sense. In sheet music, fingering is connected to musical intention, not just to reaching the next note somehow. And here's a practical point. If you use 2 tabs, it can actually be very helpful to see both tabs and sheet music at the same time. Tabs can show you positions on the fretboard. Sheet music can show you finger numbers, articulation, dynamics and musical intention. Used together, that can be a great compromise, or even transition from tabs to sheet music. Over time, you'll notice something interesting. You start relying less on tabs and more on the notes. Reason number 5. Understanding why music sounds good. Tabs help you copy. Sheet music helps you think. You can play something and say, oh, this sounds cool. Like, But why does this sound cool? Why does this interval feel tense, like? Why does this chord resolve? Why does this line feel calm? And why does this line feel uneasy? With sheet music you can actually explain why music creates emotions, not in a poetic way, but in a physical one. Frequencies, overtones, intervals, tension and resolution. Beautiful music isn't random, it's structured emotion. Reason number 6, transposition and musical flexibility. With taps it's easy to move everything up the neck, just shift to the right. For example, I can play this melody in E minor, like. And then in F sharp minor using a capo. But moving down, changing the key intelligently, is much harder without understanding what's going on. What if I want to play the same in A minor? Sheet music shows relationships between notes, not just locations on the fretboard. That gives you real flexibility. There is another important thing that taps don't really show: key. When you look at taps, you see positions and fret numbers, but you don't see the tonal center. You don't immediately know, are we in E minor, A major, did the key change? Sheet music makes key visible, and once you see the key, transposition stops being guesswork. Without key, you see the fretboard, not the music. At some point, musicians stop thinking in fretboard positions. They think in scale degrees and chord functions, like tonic, subdominant, dominant, etc. That allows them to play music they've never played before, sometimes even without notes or taps. That's a whole new world, a new musical language. But that freedom comes from understanding notes, not from memorizing shapes. And that shifts us to the next level. Reason number 7, musical independence. When you read notes, you are no longer locked into one instrument or one system. You can read music written for other instruments, understand scores, create your own arrangements. At one point I arranged a piece for guitar that was originally written for a string quintet, 2 violins, viola, cello and double bass. I had to understand what each instrument was doing, which voice carried the melody, which supports harmony, which added motion. That kind of work is impossible with taps alone. Sheet music is what made it doable. With taps you will almost always copy someone else. With sheet music you gain freedom. Sheet music is a universal language. Taps are not. Yes, tools like Songster make taps incredibly convenient. You can generate taps from a YouTube video and start playing almost instantly. But notice something important. They work because the music is already there. Taps are like a retold story. Sheet music is reading the book. Taps plus audio can replace reading. They cannot replace understanding. And just to be clear, I do use taps from time to time and even write them. They can be useful. This is not about saying taps are bad. But if you have the opportunity to learn sheet music, especially at the beginning of your journey, the answer is very clear. Yes, it's worth it. Taps help you play music. Sheet music helps you understand it. If you're happy playing the way you play, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to understand music more deeply, sheet music is the door. If you have other reasons, for or against, write them in the comments. And if you know a guitarist who lives only on taps, just send them this video. Cheers!